much going on. So much going on. Before we start, you look beautiful too. Let me first, thank you. I got to give a shout out to the AKAs in the house. We just celebrated our Founders Day. So here's the deal. When I first started out in the business, I was always the youngest reporter in the room. I was at MSNBC, I was the youngest, different Chicago youngest, and then at some point I became the oldest in the room. And so most of my producers are like under the age of 40. So they came to me and they said, Tamron, have you heard of the midlife crisis that millennials are going through? You know, midlife crisis traditionally is somebody in the middle of your journey and you decide, the stereotype was you're gonna buy a fancy car, you might get a new younger spouse, you know, you're trying to find these ways to fulfill yourself. The dictionary defines a midlife crisis as a period of emotional turmoil in the middle age caused by the realization that one is no longer young and categorized especially by the strong desire for change. So I guess I'm past midlife because I'm now 54. Now, I told the team, I always associated that time in your 40s and now the 50s, but millennials are now 29 to 44 years old, right? This is the age group. They say that they're going through it right now. That's incredible. And they're taking to social media. Think about this again. People from 29 to 44. They say they're at their breaking point. Take a look, take a look.
I'm 34 and I think I'm having a midlife crisis.
Is it just me or does it seem like everybody is going through some I'm almost 40, so we're having midlife crisis.
I'm 36 years old and I feel as if I've lost my way. Now this may be a midlife crisis, but I would like to think that I'm a little bit further away from the halfway point of my life.
I work at a place I kind of hate, in a career that I kind of hate. I don't make enough to buy a house. I don't think I'll ever make enough to buy a house.
I have 3 jobs, and I'm still struggling. I feel like I'm drowning, and I don't know what to do.
Nothing is right in our life, okay? Our jobs ain't right, relationships ain't right.
I had all these benchmarks about what being 30 was supposed to be, and I'm really nervous that I'm gonna hit very few of them.
We have social media, and social media is a lens into random strangers' lives, and they have the ability to curate their lives and make it look perfect, and we tend to compare ourselves. That has a huge impact on just the feeling of crisis and feeling overwhelmed and feeling like you're not doing enough.
Always thought by this age I'd be married with kids and a house. Even though I am okay with it, it still came to a point where I was like, is this it?
It's a big conversation making headlines. Rashma Zani is a best-selling author, philanthropist, and businesswoman who's working to change the conversation around midlife. Time magazine put her popular podcast, My So Called Midlife, on its top 10 list of 2024. Also joining the conversation, New York Times opinion writer Jessica Grose, whose article on the millennial midlife crisis went viral, got us talking. Please welcome them both to the show. Thank you so much. You know, I have to be honest, I came out in the audience and, you know, we're kind of laughing about and we're thinking of images, but then, Reshma, seeing the videos of people, especially at the end, is that's all there is.
Right.
Right, this is life?
Right.
You're now 49. When you were 42, you said midlife hit you like a ton of bricks.
Ton of bricks.
What was it?
Well, look, I think you have things that happen. So for me, my soul dog died. There was no third baby. I felt like I was stuck in my job. I felt like every time I looked in the mirror, there was another wrinkle, another imperfection. And I kept thinking, again, like, is this it? Because every day was like Groundhog's Day.
Yeah.
Every day. And every woman I know was feeling the exact same way.
Like life was on a loop. I mean,
like life was on a loop.
For your background, for people who don't know, successful, hugely successful businesswoman. You're a mom of 2, a wife. On the surface, people would say, look at this beautiful family. What do you mean is that all there is? This is what it's supposed to be.
It should feel
That's what it's supposed to feel like.
Everything. But the thing is, I think when you build a successful life, when you're constantly going and going and going, and you wake up one day and the chase and the hustle doesn't feel as exciting anymore. You know, when I walk down the street with my 21-year-old niece, I might as well be a tree. I am invisible.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of women, when you wake up in your 40s, everything changes.
I thought that was very vulnerable for you to say, you know, your 21-year-old niece, youth, beauty, all of this, and you felt walking down the street with her in your 40s, you were invisible.
I was invisible. It wasn't the same. And listen, the other thing, Tamron, culture was telling me I was invisible. Culture was telling me, get a filler, get some Botox.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Dye your hair,
Yeah.
change your body.
Yeah.
You are not sexy. You are not appealing.
Yeah.
You are not desirable.
Yeah.
And it's not just in the way that I look. And look, and here's the thing that's crazy about it, right? It's like when the exact same thing happens to men, to my husband, to George Clooney. He's hot and I'm not.
Right.
He's got the same punch, the same
They're
wrinkles.
zaddies.
They're zaddies, exactly.
Yeah.
So I realized, like, oh, I'm being conned.
Oh.
I'm being tricked.
Wait, hold on to that, because that's a big point, because Jessica, you really dug into this. You investigated what middle age looks like now. I love this. You asked the question to some folks in that range of age, what term do you like better more than middle age? Some of the responses, the early halfway, late young adult, peak survival mode. What did those answers say about where people in that range are right now mentally?
I did this reporting just as we were coming out of the worst parts of the pandemic. So I think people really felt like they were losing their minds. So the people who did have children often had little kids. People are having kids later than kind of ever before. So many of them had childcare to deal with, but they were also caring for aging parents at the same time. So they're pulled in a million directions. They have work. Their job security was not where they wanted it to be. They were maybe still paying off student loans 15, 20 years after they graduated.
But are those things unique? I mean, listen, the list that you named,
yes,
that's the list from the beginning of time. You know, it feels like, but to this generation, in your article, your op-ed that you wrote for the New York Times, you said millennials are hitting middle age and it doesn't look like what we were promised. What was the promise?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So I think people and millennials roughly were born, the oldest millennials are now in their early 40s. I'm one of them. I call myself an ancient millennial. We were raised in an era of unusual prosperity in the 90s and unusual geopolitical calm. And there were lots of predictions that that would continue unabated forever. But then we become adults, we turn 18, and 9/11 happens. Then it's the Iraq War. Then it's the 2008 recession, which if you ask some, economic commentators, we still haven't recovered from. We haven't recovered our savings. And since then, obviously, there has been a lot of political turmoil, then the pandemic, and now we don't have the accrued wealth. We don't necessarily have the family structures that earlier generations have. And the difference is rents are truly higher.
Yeah,
they are truly higher.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'll tell you, before we go to break, I saw this meme, and it talked about baby boomers who bought their homes for $100,000, who are selling them for $3 million.
Unbelievable.
To to millennials. And so this dream of being able to have this modest but beautiful home that you could be proud of it's not just New York.
No.
It's around the
everywhere.
country.
I will never forget reading one of the comments on my article from a woman who was very unsympathetic, and she was like, well, my house does have 7 times its value, but millennials just need to stop whining. And I was just like, do you hear yourself? Because you do intellectually understand the difference, and so maybe be a little more sympathetic.